So I welcome all the speakers, the volunteers, and the participants. Namaskar, I'm Toshi Tanvi, your Masters of Ceremony. So today marks the 19th STC India Conference, and it speaks the volume about the conference, of course. So we have with us Breanne Matheson and Emily January Peterson. So the topic they are going to present on is I Am Politely Aggressive. That is the interaction, power, and agency in the technical communication workspace. So about Breanne Matheson, I'll just give a small introduction. Breanne is a PhD candidate and graduate instructor at Utah State University. She has extensive experience conducting international field research in the Global South and has also conducted local action research aiming to reduce impacts of domestic violence by strengthening volunteer training. And Emily January Peterson, through her vision and research, Emily holds a PhD from Utah State University, and she is an assistant professor of technical and professional writing at Weber State University in the Department of English. So, English and Literature, sorry. So she can definitely, apprise all of us. Her research focuses on professional identities from a feminist perspective, examining how women act as technical communicators in the workplace, online, and historically. So I welcome both of you.
In December of 2015, I interviewed about 40 women in the United States about their experiences as technical communicators. And as I was talking to these women in order to write my dissertation, they kept telling me, there are women in India who are working as technical writers. You need to go talk to them. And I thought, well, that would be a kind of a cool thing to do. And so the following July, in July of 2016, I recruited Breanne, who has extensive international research experience and travel experience. And I said, let's go to India and interview some of the women who are technical communicators there and see what's going on. And so we visited with women in Chennai and Pune, and then also via Skype, women from Hyderabad. And so much of the information that we're sharing here today comes from those women, and perhaps some of them are even in the audience today, but it comes from those interviews that we did in July of 2016. And so we wanted to come back and share with you what we learned from you and ways that you can make your workplaces a little bit better. So to start out, we were going to introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit about us, but we already had a pretty great introduction, so I think we can skip this part. Okay.
One of the things that we came in wondering, and because of Emily's dissertation research, we had assumed that we would find, as we started meeting with especially women here working in technical communication, that individuals would say that one of the things that impacts their work or that makes their work challenging was issues of gender. And some of our participants did say that working in their workplaces as women caused them some areas of friction. But lots of people said other things. They said, well, maybe gender matters a little bit, or gender doesn't matter at all, but other things matter too. And so participants said things that, including, we saw ageism. People said, as I get older, there's less opportunity for me to advance in my career. Older workers are less likely to be able to continue to see stable increases in their salary, that they didn't feel as valued as workers. Individuals said that they felt ostracized in their workplaces when they lacked technical experience. So people who had extensive writing training or English training, but not so much technical experience, felt that the technical members of their team undervalued them, that they didn't feel as though they got recognition for the importance of the work that they did. And other people mentioned that they struggled around issues of globalization, that when they worked with their teams in the United States or in Europe, that those meetings or important events would get scheduled around the needs of the workers in the United States, and it was assumed that the workers here in India would not necessarily want to stay late or get on the phone at a late hour to be able to participate in phone calls, which wasn't true. We heard people say over and over again that they wanted to be included, that they felt like they had something important to offer, and that they were being excluded from those opportunities. So those are some of the challenges that we heard individuals expressing.
So we wanted to know what challenges you're facing in your workplaces right now. So take a few minutes, turn to someone who's sitting next to you, and discuss what challenges you're facing in your current workplaces. Are you being ignored by subject matter experts? Are you having a difficult time working with overseas colleagues, whatever it might be. So we'll give you a few minutes to talk that over, and then we'll have a few of you share what you came up with as your challenges.
We were warned that you might be a little shy, but we're serious. Make a new friend, tell them your name, tell them where you work, tell them maybe what brought you here, and then spend a couple of seconds just telling them what's a challenge that you face in your workplace. It's okay if it gets a little bit loud. Budget was an issue, that being able to find the right people was a concerning issue. I'm going to walk around with this mic, and if you, I'll let her walk. Can you hear me okay? Yes. We'll call on a few people to just share what's coming up for you, what kinds of concerns were getting discussed in your little pairs or in your groups.
So let me start with Purnima.
Hello, I have been a writer for 20 plus years. And I think I had some challenges initially at the beginning of my career maybe, but now I've been with SAP for about 5 years. And I was just telling Rajdeep, in fact, this morning, I think I'll hang up my boots after this. I don't have any intention of looking for any more jobs, so hopefully I will stay at SAP. And I'm having a ball.
That's great news.
Hi.
Hi.
So sometimes I think it's a personality conflict in terms of you are very easygoing by nature and your SMA is pretty introvert, so you don't get along. That's I think that's universal. Not many people must be facing that. That's I think.
Excellent. So navigating conflicting personalities can be really challenging in our workspaces.
Myself, Vijay Singh, and I would like to share from my experiences what I feel in specifically with the technical communication job function. It is always, most of the time, the developer always feel that they are somehow superior and they don't want to share, give time to the writing team member. So that is a major challenge from the functional point, I can say. Thank you.
Here, ageism works for you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Anjana. So I come from a company where we are 7 members in the team. Whenever we go for a review cycle, so the very usual comment that we get is, that we aren't a revenue generating department. Even though we give some great, ideas and initiatives for our company, since we aren't the revenue generating bit, we wouldn't be getting the profit margin, profit share of the company, which isn't very cool.
No, that's not cool at all.
Hi, I'm Harsha. I just wanted to add to what she said. Not only that, sometimes we as technical writers, we sometimes are, stuck in a particular domain or in a vertical where we cannot penetrate horizontally into the other areas in the organization. And a lot of people don't even know what we do and what exactly our job is. We need to explain it to them from scratch. What exactly do we do? How do we generate revenue? What happens? And how documentation is an important aspect. The developers take quite a bit of documentation, but sometimes it is not up to the mark. So that is one challenge that we face.
Excellent, thank you. Do we have time for like one more maybe? Giving her workout there.
Proclaim themselves as the biggest stakeholder in the company are the sales guys. So they are like, the people who are, you're supposed to just write, just do whatever we say. Although they don't sometimes even know, they're like misinterpreting a lot of things and they don't really encourage or, they really don't appreciate our work. So even if the deal is won, it is like, we are the sales guys, we are on the field, we do the job. You are just writing, that's it, just get lost after that. So all the help, all the support, all the the midnight oil that we burn, we do everything and we are like, yeah, fine, okay, thanks. Yeah, this is something that I'm facing big time for a year's time now.
Thank you.
I'll just add one challenge. Probably all of them are saying, most of them are saying that SMEs or the attitude or the top line and bottom line, all that definitely matters. But in addition to that, I think India is also struggling to get the strategic work in India. The strategic work actually happens somewhere else and we just have to execute it. So from that execution level, probably we are also trying to come to the strategic initiatives as a community.
I heard from a woman in the United States that the sales guys told her that her documentation wasn't even used and that it didn't need it to be done. And then she would see them using it every single day when they were speaking to customers. So she was like, I'm going to point that out to them. And I've also heard technical writers describe it as people think they just make documents look pretty. And we know that it's much more complicated than that, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, there's this theory called interactional and transactional power. It's by a scholar named Schneider. And the basic ideas behind this is that power cannot be possessed. It is available to everyone through interactional resources and the way that you interact with each other. And so one of the main ideas is that you can use the language or social interactions in your organizations with others to claim power for yourself. And so some of you mentioned that. You talked about educating subject matter experts or speaking up and letting them know what you do. Another thing that you can do is alter your own practice to make improvements. Change the way that you're designing the way that you interact with your organization. You can also, when there are organizational decisions that you disagree with, you can speak up. A lot of times power is possessed by an organization because no one says anything. We stay silent. And that isn't helpful, and that gives the organization power. So we just need to recognize that power can be interactional. It can be possessed by lots of different people, even writers, even technical writers. One of the ways to do this is through something called tactics. And so this is the idea that you maneuver outside of organizational constraints and you use opportune moments to assert yourself and claim power and take it back, rather than just going with the rules all the time. So you can go outside of those rules and use tactics to resist the problems that you're facing. So let's start with a few stories, and then we'll get into some specifics of what we found when we talked to over 50 practitioners who were women here in India. So here's one story. Charvi felt frustration that the program managers in her organization did not know enough about technical writing to properly support her and her colleagues. She could not get them to listen to her, so she took drastic measures. She scheduled a meeting without an agenda, and once everyone arrived, she locked the door. She locked them in the room. And then she spent the time that she had with them explaining the needs of the writing staff. And at the end, the program manager said to her, "Charvi, you are polite." She replied, "No, I am politely aggressive." And I would agree with that, since she locked them in a room. Here's another story from Wamika. She said that she felt like her managers didn't know what to do with her as the only writer. And that's often a problem for technical writers, that they're the only writer in the organization, and so no one seems to understand them. She felt like it was an uphill struggle trying to explain what was going on and what value she added to the organization. So she then found her niche in product development, and she knew that she had to be the writer there. So she said this: "I insisted on getting my own lab, and it took a long time and justification to convince people that I could, but it was a moment of pride for me." Later, she took a break from that company, and she went and helped a few startups with their technical writing needs. And then she returned to that old workplace and found that what she had done had built rapport among subject matter experts and technical communicators. So she said the writers still had challenges to make sure that they got the visibility that they were working for, but she continued to work on that by connecting different functions in the organization to make sure that the writers got visibility and respect. So she saw improvement. She saw that people were encouraging each other and working together, and she felt like that was a way for her to claim power within an organization. And in addition to that, she helped other people along the way. Here's the third story. This is Charvi again. She's quite the firecracker. She found herself being told in a meeting to take some meeting minutes and notes. And she said, "I didn't really think this was my job." So she smiled at the people who asked her to do this, and she said, "I have no issues doing it, but anyone can do it." And so her philosophy was to speak up and then do what she was asked to do, but then tell them that it doesn't have to be this way. Give them another strategy. So she called that a diplomatic transition to the no. So let's talk about some of the specific strategies that you can use to change your workplaces.
Alrighty, I'm hearing lots of you say that you're getting this information that comes down, the decisions get made somewhere else or up the line from your chain of command, and then you inherit them and you just have to execute them. And we were hearing that a lot from our participants, people saying, I wish I got invited to the meetings where decisions get made. I wish people understood that I understand the product in ways that maybe are different or unique because of my writing background, and I would like to have more say up front. I'm getting all of this information back at the very end of the product life cycle and being expected to make do with information when I could have helped it go earlier. And those are concerning conversations because it directly impacts writers' ability to be able to impact the end user and to really reach their audience. And so we heard lots of individuals expressing lots of mechanisms, and I'll let Emily tell a story here in a minute, for getting included, for asking to be included, for making themselves available off hours, or for signing up meetings themselves to get involved earlier, to start building those trusting relationships with people who had the decision-making power and getting looped in a little bit earlier. We heard lots of practitioners also say, as we met with you and talked to you, lots of you have really great technical knowledge. You have backgrounds in all kinds of technical fields, and individuals who were able to leverage that power had really great success in sort of starting to build that credibility with their SMEs. And some of you said, I didn't start with any technical background, but I went and got some. I did a little training on my own, or whatever it was that they needed to be able to start speaking the same language as their team members who were devaluing them, and that sort of demonstration of technical expertise really helped start to build their credibility. Some of you, many of our participants expressed concern about you're just writers, and I heard some of you sort of start to echo that same sentiment. And so individuals, again, were starting to want to make space for explaining and showing the ways in which they could contribute to their teams beyond just sitting behind their desk and writing things. And so to be able to start giving more information and sharing the skills that you have with your team members can go a long way. And Emily's also going to tackle a little bit about what happens for lone writers who are terribly misunderstood. Maybe you exist by yourself in a department or in an organization, and so you kind of are doing all the writing work as a catch-all, and so hopefully you're starting to build some understanding about what kinds of work you do and why that matters.
Yeah, so the best advice I can give in terms of being the lone writer is a story I heard from a woman actually in the United States. So she had worked at several different companies where she found she was the only writer in a specific department, but often these companies were very large. So she would go through the company directory and find everybody in the company who had the title of designer or communicator or writer, and she'd reach out to everyone via email and say, hey, we need to band together, especially since a lot of the information we're working with is proprietary. I can't necessarily go to my STC conference and tell people about it. I need to keep it within the company. And so she would then create a listserv where all of those people could reach out to each other. And the end result of that project that she undertook was that some of the employees for this company who lived in Canada and were over 500 miles away from any other writer in the company were able to connect with other writers across the internet. And so that, I think that's a really great initiative to take if you feel like you're alone, is look for people across the organization who you have something in common with. In terms of exclusion, Kalpana said that if you're not a person with a strong technical background, you really have to struggle to get respect in your team. And so her solution to this was to show them that you know what you're talking about. You have to make sure that you always research your topic well. You go to an SME with proper background information and do not just expect them to give you everything. So that building of respect takes time, but once you've established that, I think it becomes easier. Then people know that you are not looking to them to spoon feed you everything. And I see a lot of nods, so I think you guys are experienced at doing this. So she said when she did have questions, because she had done so much research and paid attention in meetings, that when she had questions, they knew it wasn't because she was ignorant or lazy, and they were able to help her a little more readily after that. Similarly, Orpita explained that her technical degree and background gave her the ability to talk about these issues with them, and so she had to prove that she had the knowledge. So she said, I've seen subject matter experts having a pretty laid-back attitude toward writers. thinking that they're not sophisticated enough to understand what they do. If they don't understand my background, they say, "Do you really know how the software works?" So she's been frustrated by these interactions, and so she recently told someone, "I know better than you and more than you because I work in silos in a particular scrum, or you work in silos in a particular scrum, but technical writers work across 4 or 5 different teams, and I know 4 or 5 features." And so she was able to then prove that knowledge and use it and let them know that she was intelligent, experienced, and capable, and willing to engage with their areas of expertise. And she found that they gave her a lot of respect because of that.
All right. Another one of the ways that we saw participants engaging with challenges in their workplace was to engage in kind of these 3 Ps. Very many individuals, when we said like, well, okay, so you feel misunderstood or you feel like your team members don't really value you, what do you do? And people said, I give a presentation. And I think that's a really important piece to remember about our training, that we have this training to communicate about technical subjects, but sometimes can forget to communicate about our own value. And so if you can get the attention of your team, even just for a few minutes, you don't necessarily have to lock them in a conference room, but certainly some buy-in to have some space to say, hey, here's the value that I can offer, and here's how I see it fitting into things, can be an early start into opening that door to having your subject matter experts and the rest of your teams view you as an integral part of their team. Additionally, we heard lots and lots of individuals say that they would wait. Something would go wrong and they would want to fix it, but they couldn't quite see the right opportunity to do so, and so they would wait for the right opportunity. They would wait until something in the team changed, or they would wait until something important came up that they could show their they could showcase their skills. They would wait until the right moment to sort of leverage their power, and sometimes that doesn't work very well. And so this is also a good cue for those of you who are working in management to be able to notice when your writers are saying, hey, I'm just waiting this problem out. And if you're in a position of more power, to be able to come around and say, hey, let me help you navigate this situation a little bit more based on whatever kind of power you have in the organization. And the last thing that came up over and over again was persistence. The people kept at it, they kept doing things that maybe were frustrating, but they kept doing them. They kept demonstrating their technical knowledge, they kept giving presentations or showing up to meetings at odd hours, and they kept asking to be looped in, they kept gently pressing back when something wasn't going right, and they did it again and again, and they did it politely, and they did it kindly, and they had sort of calm, explanatory attitudes around like, this is what we should do, or this is what I think, without getting too pushy, and things started to change over time with some persistence.
Yeah, so a quick story about those ideas. Basanti said that she had a manager who gave her so many responsibilities that it made it impossible for her to do all of the work. And so she said, I did not give up. I made sure that I managed everything that he gave me. He was kind of setting me up for failure, but I did not fail. And during this time, she actually broke her leg and continued to work, even though she was at home and in bed and trying to heal. And she continued to stay on top of her workload. And the result was that her manager told her she was doing a great job. But she said when it came to actual raises and performance evaluations, nothing showed up. And so this is where patience can kind of get you in trouble. You know, it's like it can be good in the long run. It's like playing the long game with your manager, but it doesn't always work. And so we've got to think about that a little bit. What can we do to fix that? In terms of presentations, Hira told us a story about a presentation that she gave her team because they were all in different locations. So she said, since I'm senior in the company, I give trainings on the tools that we are using, or a literature course about writing, how we go about writing or documenting. And because of her experience, she used it to orient new workers to parts of the organization and to make her team stronger. And she drew attention to the work that technical writers do by holding this formal training and having a formal presentation. And so making those conversations about how valuable you are official by having a presentation and by inviting people to it can really make a larger impact than one-on-one conversation.
All right, like Emily said, the idea of being persistent and just sort of working can be powerful in proving yourself, but it also can come up short. And we don't want, as writers, to be stuck in a place where our managers value us, but not enough to do anything about it. And so the last little bits here are to be thinking about the ways in which we have the ability to speak up in ways that make change, even on that one-on-one transactional basis. The first is to speak up when things don't look right, to say so. I think that initial and the quote that we titled our presentation after, being politely aggressive, is really important when you think about how you're going to frame your concerns, who you're going to frame them to, when you're going to bring them up. All of those are kind of strategic pieces in being able to raise your voice. And that politeness is important. It's important in the United States. Lots of Emily's participants in her study there said that they were working really hard to be extra polite when they were asking for something. And when we were here meeting with individuals in India, lots of you told us, well, that politeness was a really important feature in Indian culture as well, that being very polite really matters in lots of ways on the ground, and so that was extra important, that when making requests or speaking up, that we think about not only what we should say, but how we should say it and to whom we should say it. Emily's going to talk a little bit about respectable femininity here in a second. And then the last thing we heard that was really powerful is that sometimes in organizations, the organization itself will know that there's a problem or want there to be change, but not know how to achieve it. And in those cases, we heard people say, well, there was a problem, and so we formed a committee on our own, and we started working on it within the organization, but kind of as a matter of change. And so sometimes if you can get your organization to buy into change, even if they don't know quite how to make it, if you can volunteer your time or your energy to making things better, that can make the organization better for everyone.
So a story about organizing for change comes from Navya. She realized that women in her organization needed a little bit of extra support. And so she joined a gender diversity committee that was already established in her workplace and used her privilege to be part of a group that would benefit others. And so one thing we kept hearing over and over from these women was, we are privileged. We are a privileged group of women. And they were committed to using that privilege to make good changes in their organizations. And so what Navya did in her organization, the committee offered mentoring to the women who worked in the washrooms and restrooms of that organization, and they paired them with women who might help them further their professional and educational goals. We were really impressed by this. So they used their privilege and their respectable femininity, which I'll talk about in just a minute, to offer help and support to women in lower socioeconomic positions. So respectable femininity is interesting. It's a term coined by an Indian scholar named Radhakrishnan, and she said this: professional IT women become especially privileged signifiers and transmitters of a new India. The new kind of respectable Indian femininity they construct is through their gender and class, which allows them to symbolize the rapid changes that are taking place in India. So she talks about how this work that women are doing in workplaces is really important in terms of thinking about India as a new nation and the changes that are happening. And so she talked about how respectable femininity is enacted by prioritizing at-home responsibilities. So I know that a lot of you are mothers and maybe have the support of in-laws who live with you and help you, and that it's important to focus on motherhood even when you have a career. And then promiscuity is unacceptable. We heard over and over from women that being appropriate in the workplace, part of that was dressing modestly and appropriately and in ways that were enacting that respectable femininity. And so this is a way to kind of create a cultural identity along with the emerging workplace in the IT structure. So we thought this was interesting because of politeness. So women are claiming authority in the workplace by locking people in conference rooms or speaking up or creating lists of writers in their organizations that they can reach out to. But at the same time, they were reminding us that they were very privileged and that they were ultimately better off than other classes of Indian women. And this is part of that respectable femininity, is that they are concerned about those other classes, concerned about enacting a type of womanhood that is true to the values of being an Indian. And so we thought that was really interesting. I'd love to hear you weigh in on this idea of respectable femininity at the end as well, if we have time for questions.
All right, for those of you just joining us, we let out a little bit ago asking individuals to let us know what kinds of challenges that they were facing in their workplace. And at this point, we've offered you some ideas from your colleagues, essentially about what the ways in which we can sometimes combat those issues. But in case you hadn't thought of an idea, we've also provided you a few. So we're going to come back to that little workshop format. If you're joining us, this might mean that you have to meet a new friend or chat with somebody that you came in with. You could pick something that you raised earlier in the discussion. Some of you were saying, hey, I don't find that I'm being taken seriously by SMEs, or hey, I feel like we don't get to be part of the decision-making process, whatever your concerns might be, and start thinking amongst yourselves, what kinds of issues are you facing? And then secondarily, what kinds of solutions based on what we've talked about here or based on your collective knowledge might you consider sharing with the group about what you do to go about ensuring that you have enough power in your organization to be able to do your work efficiently. We'll give you just a couple of minutes, so talk quickly and then we'll come back with the mic around.
So go ahead and talk to each other about solutions using that idea of interactional power. Did you have your hand up in the back? No? Okay, there's some
We've
up here.
got some hands here.
Hi, I'm Deepa. Just wanted to say one incident where I said no and it was taken in a good manner. So this was a review meeting and a weekly review meeting. So they wanted to schedule the meeting on Friday night, 9:15 p.m. Because the product owner could not attend it earlier than that. So I said Friday evenings I'll be traveling home, so I cannot take it at that time. But I don't mind if it is preponed on Thursday night or on Saturday morning, which is a Friday night for him. So he asked me 3 times, like, if I do like this, can you change it? I strictly said no. I was not shouting or I did not say it I was just explaining it in a very polite but I said no. And then the team members who are sitting with me, they said, no, can't you adjust that? I said, no, this is something that I do every week. And it is something that I do not want to change. And it was taken in a good manner. He preponed it to Thursday evening, and it went well. There was no, but it is just the way we say. And if you don't say no there, then automatically in the personal front, I'll get affected, and that it's better, right? What makes you happy? You should be.
Good job standing up for yourself.
This is, hi, I'm Rupa, and this is with reference to engineering or SMEs not spending enough time with you guys. So what we felt is that we can involve higher management and they can include some time for us during the planning phase so that engineers and SMEs have time for you during the execution phase and you can get all your inputs on time.
Yeah. That's great, yeah, because sometimes it's the fault of the timeline rather than their willingness to meet with you.
My director hadn't met me, so I created a meeting invite myself for him, and we were just crossing in the corridors. He said, so Niharika, how is it going? And I said, it's 1 month down the line and we haven't been met once, so we should have a formal meeting for that. And that's when he said, let's catch up on CCD, and we went there and we had a half an hour chat. So that's how.
Excellent, yeah, good job.
Yeah, so I went for a project at Infosys Chennai, and we had a meeting where the project manager used to keep, because it was a meeting that we used to do with the US time hours, it was scheduled at 5 a.m. in India morning.
Wow.
So you have to get up at 5 a.m. in the morning. I did it once, and I understood that why should I be the only person to wake up, so the next time I kept on mute and went to sleep.
I love it, that's great.
All right, we should probably trend toward finishing up. Yeah, so the last thing we wanted to tell you about is that while we're here, I think I mentioned we had expected when we came last time that we would find more of you experiencing issues around gender, and we didn't. That didn't come to fruition so much. And so we'd like to extend our work to include everyone. And so we're here today to bring our work back to the community that shared it with us, but also to gather a little bit more information so that we can have a better picture of what what's happening among technical communicators in India, what kinds of challenges you're facing, what kinds of amazing skills that you have to share with us. So there's a link here to the study, which I know is really complicated to punch into your phone, but you certainly could do it that way if you wanted. But additionally, Emily and I will be setting up a table just outside here just as soon as we're done. And we'll have both paper copies and tablets for you to fill them out on as you're able. There will be prizes by drawing for participants, as well as some little bags for the very first people to participate. So we're hoping to get a chance to see you, talk to you a little bit in the hallway, and hopefully if you're up to it, you'll feel like you might share a little bit of information with us via the survey. The survey is totally anonymous. It's totally not required. So your data, your privacy will be protected. But we'll use that information hopefully and we'll share it back with the STC India as we have more information about it, so that you can learn from each other, so that we can learn from you, so that we can take what we've learned back to you, back to our communities in the United States as well, so that we can be thinking better about how to manage this global situation that we're all working in.
So it's not a question, actually, it's more of a commentary. Given what I've heard, I just wanted to share a few things that I've experienced. Maybe it'll help your survey as well.
Great.
I can definitely empathize with a lot of things we heard here in terms of struggles of getting SME time, or generally the time differences, or getting to work on cutting edge products, right? So in my company, we've been through that as well. But I wanted to share that crossing the chasm has happened, where we completely own the strategy for globally for majority of the company's revenues from a technical writing standpoint. And there are a few things that we did that helped that. And that's what I wanted to share for the benefit of the others also. One is, I think, partnering with the stakeholders, in our case it's engineering, is by simple things like co-location. Right? Instead of formulating a 150-person tech writing team in a different building, we split the group up such that the 5 writers are sitting with 100 engineers on the same floor, right? And when they go out for a cup of coffee, you're with them. When there's an all-hands for the engineering team, the writers go, right? In terms of building rapport for engineering to come back to you, we took certain steps like advancing technology, which gets them excited as well. So instead of going and talking about writing document, if you're able to bring videos into the picture, right? If you're able to bring augmented reality, if you're trying to bring in some automated workflows, it excites people, they want to partner with you. So writing becomes technical communication, not just writing. But these things have happened, and it also helps to grow the customer experience, reaching out to customers and bringing it back. So if you're able to do this and many more, we can talk offline or I can suggest. There are ways of clearly crossing the chasm and where technical writing becomes part of the product.
It's fantastic. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Adding to what he said about there are ways to change things around us. There is one thing that we did in my project team. The dev and QA are used to filing a defect for any little thing that they find. So they were doing the same thing about documentation. So in one release, there was a situation which I faced that for every little sentence, they were filing defects. So I had one defect for a note, another one to change a parameter, another one to add a diagram. So for one guide, I ended up with 35 defects for such things. So it was, we had to educate the product team and explain to them that the same mechanism does not work in our world. So for us, we suggested that we could open one defect for one guide, and they could enter, club all the such defects in one Jira. So initially it was difficult for them to accept this, because the way the QA team works is that their performance is assessed by the number of Jiras they open, the number of defects they open. So one QA member actually told us this, that well, then how will my manager evaluate me when it's appraisal time, because one of my tasks is to file documentation defects as well. So the number of defects I file for documentation will reduce, then what will I do? So we had to talk to their managers, and we had to float this proposal about the idea that the way we wanted to work, and we tried it for one guide in one release, and then they thought it works. So then now we are following that for like since that release onwards. So we have to educate the dev and QA teams for certain things which they never even imagined would happen. And but in the end, it does work well.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for having us, for being such a participative audience. If you've got something to add, want to chat one-on-one, come find us in the hall, and please take the study. We'd love to hear this information coming up in the survey so that we can crunch that data and get it back to you, because I think this kind of knowledge sharing is a really important part of being part of a community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Breanne and Emily. I think that was an outstanding presentation. And please, can I have a round of applause for them? The audience was really awesome, and it was so interactive. They discussed various, surveys and research and stories, practical scenarios that we came across. And we also, came across various solutions, like how knowledgeable and well-informed we need to be to excel as technical writers. So that was definitely brilliant. And okay, I would like to request Mugdha to please present our speakers with mementos and certificates. So that was for Emily, and now for Breanne. Thank you so much, everyone.